I always thought my family was, not perfect, but at least functional. My mom and dad had been married for over 30 years, and while my dad could be stubborn and my mom passive-aggressive, we never had some explosive drama growing up. My younger brother, Matt, and I'm Emily, 27, were raised in a pretty typical middle-class household. Things weren't bad, just the usual sibling fights and parental lectures. Nothing that prepared me for what would unravel after my grandmother died. Grandma Helen was my dad's mom, and she passed away last year at the age of 92. She had always been this elegant, sharp-tongued woman who somehow knew everything about everyone. She could be intimidating, but she was also generous in her own way. Every Christmas she'd send checks that helped me through college, and she'd host family dinners where she'd roast the turkey and half the relatives. When she died, I expected some tears, maybe a funeral fight over flowers, and then life would go on. Instead, everything cracked open. The reading of her will was the first sign something was wrong. My dad, my Uncle Rob, his brother, and a few cousins were there. I wasn't even going to attend, but my mom insisted I come for support. I walked into the lawyer's office expecting a straightforward, split everything evenly situation. Instead, the lawyer started listing assets, the house in Vermont, a large amount of stocks, a jewelry collection, and, shockingly, a trust fund I had never even heard of. Then the bomb dropped. She left almost everything to me. Not my dad. Not my uncle. Not Matt. Just me. The room went dead silent. My Uncle Rob's face turned beet red. My dad blinked like he'd misheard. My mom squeezed my hand so tight I thought she'd break it. Meanwhile, I sat there completely stunned, like maybe the lawyer had confused me with someone else. The will wasn't vague, it named me specifically. The Vermont house, the jewelry, and 70% of her financial assets were mine. My dad and uncle were left with token amounts, and Matt was barely mentioned. Afterward, my dad wouldn't even look at me. My uncle stormed out cursing, and one of my cousins muttered something about me being the favorite little princess. The lawyer explained that Grandma had redone her will a year before she died, with great clarity of mind. Here's the thing, I had no idea why she did it. Yes, I visited her a lot during her last years, especially since I was working remotely and could drive up to Vermont on weekends. But it wasn't like I was her caretaker. We'd play cards, gossip about neighbors, and drink tea. She'd always joke that I was the only one who listens. But I never imagined she meant it literally. That night, my dad called me into his study. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just looked at me with this cold expression I'd never seen before and said, "You know what you did?" I was speechless. What did he mean? I hadn't asked Grandma for anything. I didn't even know she was changing her will. That's when things started to unravel. After my dad told me, "You know what you did," I couldn't shake those words. I barely slept that night, lying in bed replaying the scene over and over. Did he think I manipulated Grandma? Bribed her? It made no sense, but his tone left no room for doubt. He believed I was guilty of something. The next morning, I came downstairs to find my mom whispering furiously with my dad in the kitchen. They both stopped when I entered, like kids caught stealing cookies. My dad muttered something about lawyers and walked out. My mom just gave me this sad little smile and asked if I wanted pancakes, like we hadn't just stepped into a family war. I thought maybe things would cool off with time, but instead they got worse. Matt called me later that week, his voice icy. "So, Em, what was your plan? Cozy up to Grandma and cut the rest of us out? Nice job." I tried to explain that I hadn't done anything, that I was just as shocked as everyone else. But Matt laughed bitterly and said, "Save it. You always were her favorite." Then he hung up. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. Matt and I had fought a lot as kids, but we'd always been close underneath. Now he wasn't even giving me a chance to defend myself. Things came to a head 2 weeks later when my Uncle Rob invited everyone over to his house to talk. I went, stupidly hoping it would be a chance to clear the air. Instead, it turned into an ambush. The moment I walked in, Rob slammed a stack of papers on the table. "Do you know what this is?" he demanded. It was a copy of the updated will, along with some bank statements showing Grandma had transferred a large amount of money a year ago, into an account with my name on it. Except, I had never seen that account before. I swore I had no idea, but no one believed me. My uncle accused me of forging Grandma's signature, my dad sat there stony-faced, and Matt muttered under his breath about gold digging. My mom, bless her, tried to defend me, but even she sounded uncertain. I left in tears, shaking so badly I almost crashed the car on the way home. Later that night, I logged into my own bank just to check, and there it was. An account under my name I didn't even know existed, with more money than I'd ever seen in my life. Somehow, Grandma had opened it and set it up to funnel funds to me. And that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a recent withdrawal, $10,000, made after Grandma had died. I stared at the screen so long I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. But it was there, in black and white, $10,000 withdrawn from the account, dated 3 weeks after Grandma's funeral. I felt sick. I had barely wrapped my head around the fact that this account even existed, and now someone was dipping into it? Under my name? That wasn't just shady, it was illegal. The next morning, I went straight to the bank. I half expected them to say it was some glitch, but no. The teller pulled up the records, frowned, and told me the withdrawal had been made in person. My stomach flipped. I asked who made it, but she just said she couldn't release that information without legal action. I was about to leave, humiliated and furious, when the manager quietly pulled me aside. She lowered her voice and said, "Between you and me, it was a man. Mid-50s. Looked a lot like you, actually. My dad." I drove home in a fog, alternating between rage and disbelief. My dad had stolen from me. Not just a little, $10,000. And yet, I could already hear the excuses he'd give. It wasn't really mine, it was family money, I didn't deserve it. That night, I confronted him. My mom was in the kitchen, Matt was sulking in the living room, and I just blurted it out. "Why did you take the money?" The look on his face told me everything. He didn't even try to deny it. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Your grandmother made a mistake. She was old, confused. That money should never have been in your name to begin with. I'm just correcting it." Correcting it. Like stealing was some noble act. I lost it. Years of swallowing my feelings came boiling up, and I screamed at him that Grandma had been more lucid than any of us. That she chose me. That he was nothing more than a thief. Matt jumped in, of course, siding with Dad immediately. "You think you deserve all this? You think just because you played cards with her and listened to her stories that you're entitled to everything? Get over yourself, Em." I expected my mom to defend me, but instead she whispered, "Maybe we should just share it, honey. It would make things easier." That cut deeper than anything else. Even she thought I should just hand over what Grandma had specifically given me. I stormed out, shaking, but before I left the house I heard my dad mutter something that chilled me to the bone. "She doesn't know the whole story anyway." The whole story? I didn't know what he meant, but I was determined to find out. After my dad's cryptic line, "She doesn't know the whole story anyway," I couldn't think about anything else. What story? What was I missing? I decided to go back to Vermont, to Grandma's house. It was technically mine now, though it didn't feel like it. The old farmhouse smelled like cedar and lavender, exactly as I remembered. Her teacups were still stacked neatly, her knitting basket by the couch, as if she might walk in at any moment. I searched through her desk, which she always kept obsessively organized. Bills, old birthday cards, a stack of crossword puzzles. Nothing strange. But then I noticed the false bottom in the bottom drawer. I remembered once as a kid seeing her hide Christmas gifts there. I pulled it open, and found a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. They weren't addressed to anyone. Just dated, ranging from the 1980s all the way up to 2 years ago. My hand shook as I read the first one. It was from Grandma to my mom. Except it wasn't sweet or grandmotherly. It was venomous. She accused my mom of stealing my dad away, of being manipulative, of keeping secrets from him he had the right to know. One line seared into my brain: he will never forgive you when he learns what you did. I sat there stunned. What had my mom done? I kept reading, flipping through the years. The letters got darker, more obsessive. Grandma kept circling back to one thing, something about the bloodline not being pure. I didn't know what that even meant, but it made my skin crawl. Then I found the letter that explained everything. It was from 1996, a year before I was born. In it, Grandma flat out accused my mom of having an affair. She wrote, "If that child isn't Robert's, the truth will come out one day. And when it does, I will make sure everything I own goes to the only one who deserves it." My heart stopped. The child she was talking about was me. Suddenly everything made sense: the favoritism, the inheritance, the account in my name. Grandma didn't see me as just her granddaughter. She saw me as leverage. Proof. A weapon against my mom. I sat there in the dusty farmhouse, letters spread around me, realizing my whole life might be built on a lie. Was my dad even my real father? I didn't know what to do. Burn the letters? Confront my mom? Take a DNA test? But then, before I could decide, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." That text rattled me so badly I almost dropped the phone. Stop digging or you'll regret it. It couldn't have been random. Someone knew I'd been in Grandma's house, someone knew I'd found the letters. There were only a handful of people who could have sent it. My dad. My uncle. Or, chillingly, my mom. I didn't go back to the city right away. Instead, I drove home the next morning, letters shoved into my backpack like contraband. I walked through the front door and went straight to the kitchen, where my mom was making tea like nothing was wrong. My dad was at work. Matt was God knows where. I slammed the stack of letters onto the counter. "Want to explain these?" She froze. For a second I thought she'd deny everything, but instead she just closed her eyes, sighed, and whispered, "You weren't supposed to see those." I demanded answers. Was I Dad's kid? Did she have an affair? Why did Grandma hate her so much? And then the truth started spilling out. She admitted she had been seeing someone, years ago, before she married Dad. A man named Richard, who lived in Vermont and apparently knew my grandma. She swore it ended before she got married, but when she found out she was pregnant with me, she couldn't be 100% sure who the father was. She'd buried it, never told Dad, and hoped no one would ever find out. But Grandma had. And she never let it go. She made me pay for it every time we saw her, Mom whispered. Snide comments, little digs, and those letters. I begged her to stop, but she wanted leverage. She threatened to tell your father everything. I couldn't even process it. I felt like the floor had disappeared under me. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. Her eyes filled with tears. Because you're mine. That's all that mattered. I didn't want you to grow up thinking you were some mistake. I wanted to scream. To run. Instead, I shoved the letters back in my bag and said the only thing I could: "I'm getting a DNA test." That's when she grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin harder than I thought she was capable of. "Emily, listen to me. Don't do this. If your father finds out, if anyone finds out, it will destroy this family." Her desperation scared me. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if my mom was capable of more than just lying. When I pulled away, she whispered, almost to herself, "I warned Helen this would happen. I told her she was pushing too hard." That's when it clicked. The text message. The threat. It hadn't come from my dad or uncle. It had come from her. After my mom's desperate warning, I couldn't stay in the house another minute. I booked a cheap motel on the edge of town and stuffed the letters under my pillow like they were cursed treasure. I ordered a DNA test kit that night. It felt almost cinematic, spitting into a tube that might destroy my family forever. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my closest friend. I mailed it off, and then I had to wait. 2 weeks dragged by. In that time, my dad grew colder, my brother avoided me, and my mom oscillated between forced cheerfulness and teary breakdowns. I kept my secret like a weapon in my pocket. Finally, the email came, "Your results are ready." I locked myself in my car in the grocery store parking lot to open them. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type in my password. And there it was, in blunt, clinical language. Robert Miller, 0% parental match. Richard Davis, 99. 97% parental match. Richard. The man my mom admitted she'd been with before Dad. My biological father. I stared at the screen, my chest tight, like I'd been sucker punched. All those years thinking I was my dad's daughter, all the fights, the coldness, the attempts to win his approval, they meant nothing. I wasn't his. Not by blood. And suddenly Grandma's obsession made sense. She'd known. Maybe not scientifically, but instinctively. That's why she singled me out. That's why she left everything to me. Not because she loved me more, but because I wasn't really one of them. I thought the worst was over. But then I scrolled further down the report. And I froze. Because there, under relatives, was a match I didn't expect. Matthew Miller, 50% sibling match. Not full sibling. Half. Which meant Matt wasn't Dad's kid either. I sat in my car, my whole body trembling, realizing my mom had lied even more than I thought. If Matt wasn't Dad's either, then who the hell was his father? Before I could even process it, my phone buzzed again. Another text from the same unknown number. You don't want to go down this road, Emily. Stop now. Except this time, they made a mistake. They didn't block their number. It was Matt. When I saw Matt's name attached to that threatening text, I nearly dropped my phone. My brother, the one who had been calling me greedy, accusing me of manipulating Grandma, was the one warning me to stop digging? I drove straight to his apartment. My hands were shaking the whole way, not from fear but from fury. He opened the door wearing a smug little smirk, like he knew exactly why I was there. Don't look so shocked, he said before I could even speak. You were always too curious for your own good. I shoved my phone in his face. Why are you threatening me? What the hell do you know that I don't? For a moment, he looked almost guilty. But then he leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, and dropped the bomb. Because I've known the truth for years. And you were never supposed to. I felt the room spin. You knew Dad wasn't my father? He smirked. Not just that. I knew Dad wasn't my father either. The air went out of my lungs. He admitted he'd found out in high school, snooping through Mom's emails. Apparently, she had written desperate messages to Richard, my biological father, begging him not to contact me. Matt had pieced it together, then later confronted Mom. And she confirmed it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Oh yeah, he said bitterly. She begged me to keep quiet. Said Dad would never forgive her if the truth came out. So I kept the secret. 4 years. Then why the threats? I demanded. He laughed coldly. Because unlike you, I know how this family works. Dad doesn't care about us, he cares about bloodlines and appearances. You think he's cold to you now? Wait until he finds out neither of us are his kids. He'll cut us out completely. Mom too. Everything will implode. I stared at him, my mind racing. So you'd rather keep lying forever? Yes, he said flatly. Because the second you expose the truth, you don't just lose Dad, you lose everything. And I'm not going down with you. That's when it hit me. His anger about Grandma's will, his resentment toward me, it wasn't just jealousy. He was terrified. Terrified that the inheritance, the house, all of it, was proof that the lie he'd been helping Mom keep was about to unravel. I thought that was the end of it, until he said one more thing, almost casually. "Oh, and by the way, Richard isn't just your dad." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" Matt's smirk widened. "He's mine too." After Matt's revelation, I couldn't breathe. My so-called little brother wasn't my half-brother at all, he was my full brother. We didn't share Robert Miller's blood at all. We were both Richard's kids. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I demanded, my voice cracking. Matt just shrugged. "Because you never needed to know." I handled it. You dig too much. You would have blown it all up years ago." I left before I did something violent. My head was pounding as I drove aimlessly, until one thought cut through the fog: I needed to find Richard. The DNA site had matched me with Richard Davis as a close relative. After some obsessive online sleuthing, I tracked him down, living less than an hour away, in a small town in Vermont. The man my mother had sworn to keep away from us was practically in our backyard. I sat outside his house for 20 minutes, heart racing. It was a modest place, peeling paint, a pickup truck in the driveway. Nothing remarkable, except for the fact that the man inside was apparently the key to my entire existence. Finally, I got out of the car and knocked. The door opened, and there he was. Late 50s, salt and pepper beard, piercing blue eyes. And the second he saw me, those eyes widened. "Emily," he whispered, like he'd been waiting for me. The sound of my name on his lips made my stomach twist. "So it's true," I said. "You're my father." He didn't even hesitate. "Yes. You and Matt. Both of you." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Why didn't you fight for us? Why didn't you?" He cut me off, his expression hardening. "Your mother wouldn't let me. She made it clear, if I ever tried to get close, she'd destroy me. And Helen, your grandmother, backed her up. She hated me, but she wanted the secret buried just as much as your mother did." That stopped me cold. "Wait. Grandma knew? She left everything to me because she knew?" Richard nodded grimly. "She wanted to punish your parents. She thought giving it all to you was her way of getting revenge." I felt like I was falling through air. None of this was about love or family, it was about control, manipulation, vengeance. And then Richard said something that made my blood run cold. "But there's something you don't know. Something your mother never told you." He pulled out an old shoebox from the closet and handed it to me. Inside were photographs, me and Matt as kids. Pictures I'd never seen before. And in the back of the box, a document that looked official. I unfolded it with trembling hands. It was a birth certificate. For a baby girl named Emily Davis. My name. My birthday. But under Mother's name, it didn't say my mom's. It said Rebecca Carter. A name I didn't recognize. Richard's eyes darkened. "The woman you call Mom isn't your real mother." I stared at the birth certificate until the letters blurred. My name. My birthday. But the mother listed wasn't the woman who raised me. "I don't understand," I whispered. "This has to be fake." Richard shook his head. "It's not. Rebecca Carter was your real mother. She and we were together when you were born. She was fragile, though. She struggled with depression, with other things. A year after you were born, he stopped, his jaw tightening. She couldn't handle it. She took her own life." My stomach lurched. "No. That's impossible. Mom, my mom, she's been there since day one. She took you in," Richard said bluntly. "She was Robert's wife by then. They decided to raise you as theirs. Robert knew the truth at first, but over time, he buried it. Pretended you were his, to keep up appearances. Helen, your grandmother, was the only one who refused to play along. That's why she tormented your mother all these years. That's why she left everything to you. My head was spinning. My whole life, I'd believed my mom was my mom. She'd kissed my scraped knees, sat through my school plays, made me tea when I was sick. And now I was being told she wasn't even my biological mother? But... Matt? I asked, my voice trembling. Richard nodded. Different story. He is hers. But I'm his father too. Which means you and Matt are half-siblings after all, not full. The room tilted. My mom wasn't my mom. My dad wasn't my dad. The only person I thought I could cling to, Matt, wasn't even fully my brother. I left Richard's house in a daze, clutching the shoebox like it was radioactive. On the drive home, a storm was rolling in, lightning splitting the sky, which felt almost too on the nose for how my world was collapsing. When I finally walked through the front door, my mom was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for me. She saw the shoebox, and her face went white. You went to him, she whispered. I slammed the birth certificate on the table. Who the hell am I? Who is Rebecca Carter? For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, to my shock, she laughed, a bitter, broken sound. I told Richard this day would come. I begged him not to drag you into this. Answer me. I screamed. And then she looked me dead in the eye and said, Rebecca wasn't fit to be your mother. I saved you. If it weren't for me, you'd be rotting in foster care. You should be thanking me. It felt like a knife in my chest. Saving me? Or stealing me? Her voice dropped to a chilling whisper, and if you ever try to take me down with this, I'll make sure you regret it. At that moment, I realized the truth. My mother's biggest betrayal wasn't her affair. It was that she had stolen me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my room with the shoebox open on the bed, Rebecca Carter's name staring back at me from that brittle birth certificate. My mom's words kept circling in my head, I saved you. By morning, I knew I couldn't stay quiet. I called my dad. My real dad, Richard. I told him everything, about the letters, the money Dad stole, the inheritance, and the birth certificate. He was quiet for a long time, then finally said, You need to be careful. Helen wasn't wrong, your mother is dangerous when cornered. Later that day, I decided to confront everyone at once. My family deserved the truth, whether they wanted it or not. I told them all to meet me at Grandma's house in Vermont, Dad, Mom, Matt, even Uncle Rob. When they arrived, they looked at me like I was staging an intervention. In a way, I was. I laid everything on the table, the DNA results, the birth certificate, the letters. The room went silent except for the rain hammering against the windows. My dad's face went pale as he read. You knew, he whispered to Mom. She tried to grab his hand. Robert, listen, I did what I had to. He yanked away, shaking his head. You lied to me for 27 years. You made me raise children who weren't mine, and you let me believe, his voice broke. You let me believe I was their father. Uncle Rob, of course, was delighted. Well, this explains why Helen left everything to Emily. She wasn't punishing you, Rob. She was protecting her. That set my dad off. He slammed his fist on the table, the old wood rattling. This family is a joke. A goddamn circus. But then, Matt stood up. His voice was eerily calm. No. The real joke is that we've all been dancing around this while he pointed at me, has been sitting on a fortune. Grandma gave you everything, Emily. And you've been lording it over us while the rest of us fight scraps. I stared at him, stunned. Matt, are you serious? I didn't ask for any of this. His lip curled. You always were the favorite. Even when you weren't hers. Even when you weren't Mom's. And then, before I could respond, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. The room erupted, Mom screamed, Dad shouted, Uncle Rob ducked behind the couch. I froze, heart pounding, as Matt waved the weapon, his hand trembling. I'm done being second best, he yelled. If I can't have what I'm owed, no one will. It all happened in seconds. Dad lunged at him, trying to wrestle the gun away. There was a deafening crack, a flash of light. My ears rang as I saw Dad collapse to the floor, blood spreading across his shirt. Mom fell to her knees, shrieking his name. Uncle Rob was already dialing 911. Matt just stood there, stunned, staring at the gun in his hands like it had betrayed him too. I dropped to the floor beside Dad, pressing my hands to the wound, but the blood kept pouring out. His eyes met mine for one brief, devastating second. And for the first time in my life, I saw something like love there. Then it was gone. The police came. Matt was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming that it wasn't supposed to happen like this. Mom sat in the corner, rocking back and forth, whispering to herself. Uncle Rob gave his statement, practically gleeful at the chaos. And me? I sat on the porch in the rain, the inheritance, the letters, the birth certificate, all of it, meaningless now. Because in the end, the real betrayal wasn't just Grandma's manipulation, or Mom's lies, or Matt's violence. It was that we were never really a family to begin with. Just a collection of secrets waiting to explode.